Hello and welcome to Module 10. Let's go ahead and get started. Real quick before we get into this week's topic, I want to talk about your written expression project. The main difference between your math project and your written expression project is only your lesson plan section. Everything else is identical other than the fact that you're thinking of writing and obviously not math. So all the other components are still the same and in place. The only thing is you're not going to have your conceptual, declarative, problem solving, etc., because obviously that's not a part of writing. But you are coming up with your 5 lesson plans, and they must include co-instruction technology, peer-mediated instruction, and teacher-constructed adapted materials. Also, I realize that writing is a very broad topic, and it's a lot to target all of the students' needs within 5 lessons. So if you would like to focus in on one specific area, that would be fine with me. For example, if you're focusing in on grammar, spelling, paragraphs, capitalization, punctuation, vocabulary, whatever you might be focusing in on, that's completely fine. Just make sure that you define within your lesson plans as to why you're working on that to get them to be better writers. As you know, this coming week is spring break, so there is no new work assigned for this coming week, and Module 10 is not due until after the break, which would be the following Tuesday. I will not be available during spring break. So let's jump into your writing topics this week, and I must start by saying that this is a very long module, and I am not intending to read every little piece of this module from the slides in front of you that you can see. So I do recommend for you to take the time to open up the PowerPoints and print them off and go through the pieces of what I talked about within this, because there's a lot of information I'm not going to cover in this video that I'm just going to briefly go over. So just words of wisdom, you need to look at it first. Okay, so we're going to be talking and answering these questions. One of the first things that I would like you to do to reference to is in the very beginning part of your Graham and Harris text on page 2 and 3. There's a lovely table that I find to be so darn helpful, not only for myself but for other teachers when I'm giving them a menu of resources. All of the strategies listed within this table are all research-based for instruction, and they even tell you within this table what is it about, what's the description, what genre can it apply to, how can it help a writer, and where that strategy specifically is located in the text. It's fantastic because it's right at your fingertips and it's all in a lovely list, and then that way you know real quickly how to go through and just rapidly state what those different strategies are, such as stop and list, CDO, scan, stop and dare, COPS, please, etc. All of those strategies can all be found within that table. So I would like for you to take a look at that. We're going to talk about word usage, vocabulary, punctuation, capitalization, all of those good components of writing. We're going to talk about students, how they can self-regulate themselves when it comes to revising, and then we're also going to talk about some commercially available products. So the first thing I'm going to start with is just resources. I think there's tons and tons out there, and honestly I could fill up this entire slide with a variety of things, but here's just a few that I'd like for you to think about and keep in your back pocket. My number one favorite is this Words Their Way. And the reason why I love this text and this resource is because it doesn't only help with written expression, but it also ties to reading. It kind of goes hand in hand. What's fabulous about that is you get more bang for your buck when you're doing these instructional activities because it applies to both. So it's a phonics word study base. It works on vocabulary, and it also works on spelling instruction, which is just great. Another thing that I really like to build for vocabulary is Words Are Wonderful. And there are so many different books within this series, and I find all the activities to be great. Even if you can approach to do it every single day is great, because your students can really build upon their vocabulary, even for students who have a very limited vocabulary to begin with. I think the key is making sure that you're explicitly giving them those opportunities to be exposed to these things. Also, and I know these are for younger grade levels, typically we see these, but trust me, I still use these with my older students, because if they're missing these gaps, it's no harm, no foul to spend 10 to 15 minutes just to practice some of these skills, to get them reviewing them, to have their grammar, to understand the capitalization, punctuation rules, the mechanics, all that good stuff. So paragraph editing I find to be fabulous, especially with students who struggle with tenses, as well as the daily language review is also great. Both of these are from the Evan Moore series. What are the common challenges that our students face when it comes to writing? Well, definitely they struggle with poor advanced planning, generating content, persistence, revising, knowledge of writing, self-efficacy, and transcription skills. I can definitely say that if you look at pretty much any student that you're working with, I guarantee they're not only hitting just one, but they're hitting multiple areas of these common challenges. And it's our job to help them to get past these challenges. Of course, before we can go any further, we have to make sure that we know where our students are currently at in order to get them to where they need to be. So assessments are key. We've got to screen our kids to know where they're at, and even specifically diagnosing what their specific needs are within writing. So paying attention to the different assessments that you can do, either the standardized assessments that we typically already have in place or doing some more informal assessments. We've got to get to the root cause. We'll talk about handwriting and spelling a bit later as well. So as you know, there's a ton of different standardized assessments already out there. Obviously, we have our state assessments, we have NWEA, we have a great deal. There's also other examples are the Toll, there's the Peabody, there's the Woodcock-Johnson, there's the Wyatt. I could go on and on. There's tons out there. It doesn't matter which one you utilize, but once you have one, make sure it compares with the other and that you're having an alignment, that the results are finding the same thing, so you know specifically what you need to build on with your students. And like I said, you want to start with the specifics and build. You can't try to approach and do everything that the kid's struggling with at once. You've got to prioritize. Informal assessments are keys. We've talked about curriculum-based measurements before, so it's perfectly fine to use a cold writing prompt that they're already doing within their language arts class or maybe in a different class, utilizing the writing pieces they've already completed and taking a look at that to see what is going on. Do the error analysis just like we did with math. What specifically are they struggling with, and make note of it. Fluency is key, just like it is in with math. If students aren't able to frequently just write and fluidly write, if they're struggling with spelling words, if they don't know the difference between a capital and a lowercase letter, obviously that's going to have them struggle with being able just to fluidly write. So we've got to work at the basics once again and build up. Vocabulary is huge. You can't assume that they have been exposed to a great vocabulary. I know they've had content vocabulary within their classes, but we've got to make more of a connection to how those words actually mean. It's always funny to me when people use vocabulary that they don't really understand. They know the word, but trying to put it in the right context is sometimes difficult, especially for our students. And so making sure that they completely understand that some words have multiple meanings, but knowing how those meanings apply when writing. And I already talked about curriculum-based assessments, but just real quick, AIMSweb, Intervention Central, and GymWrite Online are just a few resources for you if you would like to look at fluency specifically. What I'd like you to do is I'd like for you to pull out your samples again that might have already collected as you're starting to get working on your written expression project or what you're going to be collecting. And I want you to start looking them over and start thinking about what their struggles are, what assessments you've already conducted, maybe more assessments that you need to do. And also seeing specifically, looking at one that could really impact them the most with your giving direct attention to that one thing. Your approach should be, as just with reading and other things, in order to be a better reader, you have to read a lot more. Well, the same thing applies to writing. You have to write a great deal to become a better writer. Even if you ask somebody who is an author or somebody who really is a journalist and writes, they write all the time. They write for fun, they write for a column, they write for a book. They really enjoy writing. Now, I'm not saying that our kids need to write to that extreme, but I definitely think that they need to be writing every single day in multiple subjects. It's important that we motivate and make sure our kids know that it's like risk-free to take those chances just to write about what they want, and realize that you cannot target, and this is sometimes a deficit that some teachers do, is that they pinpoint every single thing that a student is not doing well when it comes to a writing piece, and then eventually everything that they worked on is now all read because the teacher has pinpointed all of those things, and that's difficult for students. As a teacher and working with a language arts teacher, one of the things that I always pinpoint is like, let's work on specific targets each week to build them up. So one week we could be working on punctuation and capitalization. Another week let's focus on syntax. Another week let's focus on complex versus simple sentences. And let's build from there instead of trying to address everything all at once. Explicit instruction is huge. I'm a big proponent of modeling for our students. If they're going to be good writers, they've got to see what good writing looks like. So when I'm talking, I use a strategy like TAP, where they come up with a topic, audience, purpose, and a plan. We plan together. We write based off that plan. And typically what I have my students do is they open up their notebook. On the left side, they do everything that I do as far as my model. Then when they go to being independent, they write on the right side of that page on the notebook. So they, while they're writing, can clearly see what a good model of writing looks like, so they have a guide to know where they're going independently. It's key. Establishing writing goals, making sure you know where your students are and explicitly telling them what your goals are for them to be better writers. Making sure you have that collaboration, of course, between the language arts teacher as well as other teachers as well as yourself. And then utilizing these strategies, they really do work. It's important to provide frequent opportunities for students to write. It's great to have a menu of options that students can write about in regards to topics, and they can just pick which one they would like the most. You'll have more of a buy-in then. It's also really important to have a real purpose behind why they're writing and get them to be more active with understanding what's the point of even writing, making it very relevant. Time is key, and I know sometimes we don't have that, but sometimes it's not necessary to have kids expected to write all in just one period. Why can't we expend it over a week, especially for the kids that we are really struggling and we're trying to get them to build up their skills? Exposing them to a variety of different writing tasks and targets is important. Integrating writing, of course, within the other subject areas and allowing them to get credit for both language arts and social studies at the same time is fantastic. Students will be more encouraged to do a good job if they know it's going to count for 2 classes. And also we've got to take in consideration their previous linguistic experience, because sometimes they just don't understand what a simile, a metaphor, or personification is. We have to build that instruction. All right. The next thing that I want to talk about is, just like within reading, there is a, we read to learn and then we learn to read, or there's learn to read and then read to learn. So writing is the same way. We teach to write and write to teach. Once again, goals are important. We need to assist our students and have them realize how to monitor their own progress. That collaborative programming is important. Share writing with whole group, with peers, with you specifically. Provide those opportunities for them even to have that collaboration within just the classroom between you and their peers is important, not only outside with the other teachers, but as well within the classroom. Writing conferences I find to be fantastic. It's not allowing you to push so much your ideas, it's allowing them to have an interactive dialogue and to prompt them along the way so that they understand what they need to do. But it's very comfortable and it's not fearful, and you're setting up a good environment when you can write together and work on their writing one-on-one, I think is key. As we mentioned, those strategies do work. You've got to be understanding that the I covered it approach is not good enough, that we have to follow through and be constantly reviewing what we've taught. Composing. There's a variety of different graphic organizers. We've talked about that as well. Utilizing vocabulary word walls, word banks is important to work for your students. And also the language experience approach I like a lot, where students have the opportunity to talk with one another before. And I know you see that more in the elementary model, but I would love to see it more at the high school model too, before they start writing, that they could debate each other or start getting their ideas out there and listen to one another to get started is great, because sometimes students don't always have the answer and know how to get started about a topic because they don't know what to really say, but if they hear somebody else talk about the same thing, they can start to get ideas from that. It's not stealing, it's just getting those brain juices a-flowing. The teaching strategies that we've talked about before are within the book, so there they are again. Also, here are some great commercial programs. Some of these are with a cost, some are not, so you have these to check out. Here's some more materials as well when it comes to word banks. Supplemental materials, as we've talked about, is fantastic as well. Utilizing technology, as you already know, is key. There's a ton already out there. It's just a matter of searching for exactly what you're needing. There's a lot of great things even within technology, because you can even have your students submit their writing within, and they can even get feedback from other companies that somebody will look at their writing and give them feedback, rather than the teacher having to do that one-on-one, because sometimes we don't have the time to do that. There's a lot of assistive technology as well, like the text-to-speech software, word prediction software. Those things really help our students, as well as getting organized, like Kidspiration and Inspiration. There's also computer software programs such as KidKeys, Mavis Beacon for typing, things like that to help them to be better in order to utilize the computer, getting them the skills to be able to do that really quickly. And also, as you see, there's more resources listed here as well. There's some internet resources for writing that will help you. As we've talked about, there's assistive technology, smart keyboard, specialized software, augmentative and alternative communication devices, naturally speaking, Dragon Speak, all of those are great things to use. As you know, you are working still on your graduate project. Your password, before I forget this week, is the word mechanics. Please send me the word mechanics. And if you have any questions or any other thoughts this week, please let me know. Thank you.